We have feminists of every group. We can't even call them feminists, they're sexist. So we've got a lot of autistic people being harmed right now. Unfortunately, we've also got attention grabbing women who have been taught to do this. We've got a lot of late life diagnosis with women who claim to be autistic when in reality they're pretty women who are given drugs their entire life for free, and then they hit the wall and people didn't want to give them things for free anymore. Then they want to claim, oh, I didn't know that it was wrong. You really? Really? If you enjoyed the sex, then don't shame men for it. There are social consequences to your actions. Yes, people are going to judge you. They're going to pass judgment on you. They're going to talk trash behind your back. I'll talk my trash publicly. If you won't hear what I have to say, I'll just get loud and proud publicly. Now, one thing that I noticed about many of these women, they want to change it to in almost every case. I even see this on BLM stuff. BLM, sorry to say, is very specifically about black men, not black women. Very, very specifically about black men. 96% of those killed by police every year are men. Not black men, not white men, not Asian men, not Native American men, just men. About half our population is men. Women are 11 times more likely to be stalkers than men. Women rarely stalk somebody solo. It is very rare for them to do so. Whereas men very, very rarely get other people involved unless it's serious and they're trying to turn it into the police. Men are far less likely to go to the police because they're less likely to be heard. We get to see with me how that works. A woman does something wrong, she throws on the tears, people help her immediately. I'm tired of women jumping onto all these things and taking away from male victims. I'm tired of black people getting on and taking away from all of the non-black victims, all of us, Asian victims, Hispanic victims, but then we've got laws being written in that protect people of color. Well, is pink not a color? So we've got a lot of women now who made a lot of bad life choices. They're still sort of pretty enough to get an old doctor to write something down for them. Hey, old doctor, pretend I'm autistic. I can play it off pretty decent. I can throw on the tears. Unfortunately, we've got a lot of people doing that. We've also got them playing Christian. Most of these women are not autistic, and they're not Christian either. They're drug addicts who are trying to manipulate you. People like Danica Garner. Danica Garner tried pretending like she was autistic. I don't see it. She was a drug addict. She hooked up with Natalie Bollinger's dad because Natalie Bollinger's dad had the drugs. This stuff is not okay. So I see it in the autism community too. both men and women are expected to make specials about women. What about the men? What about the men? See, no matter what, we get women who want to separate it and make it, oh, us women are being more victimized than anyone else. Many of you women that I see typing in autism sites, you had a boyfriend. That's what it's called. It's called having a boyfriend. If you ended up with that boyfriend because he had drugs, well, that's called prostitution. Prostitution is not the same as being autistic. Being a drug addict is not the same as being autistic. PTSD is not the same thing as being autistic. However, if you are autistic, there is a high likelihood that you have post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, there's a difference between being like this because you made bad life decisions and actually being autistic. Many people, they want to have the high-functioning autism thing going on. Well, that doesn't work. That just discredits you. Now, I've spoken up for many years about the abuse in the system against both men and women. I'm not going to pretend that it just happens to women, and also I'm not going to pretend that it happens more to women. Women are more likely to get physically violent in a relationship. Men are more likely to be arrested. That's as simple as it is. Women are more likely to instigate physical violence. Men are more likely to be killed. A man is more likely to kill a woman himself. A woman is more likely to have a man do it for her. Oh, poor me, I didn't know he was going to do that. Well, we've all been there. We've all had women in our lives that we've known that have done that to at least one of our friends, at least one of our relatives. Some of us, we have relatives that are like that. But we need to allow for autism to be based on autism itself. When you make bad mistakes in life, it's not because you're autistic. You might be being victimized to the point that you have to make very desperate decisions. You might have been targeted because you're autistic. However, the majority of you, you're not autistic. You're manipulators. Just like the majority of the Christians that I know, they're manipulators. I see a lot of women today trying to take over niches. And of course, we're expected to give them that niche. To say, oh, well, because it's a woman, she must be telling the truth. Oh, no, 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 no. No, that is what teaches women that they don't have to tell the truth. Now, when we get to the point that we've got feminists, man-haters, getting onto autism groups and trying to make it all about female sexual assault victims, that is the only category where women are more likely to be the victims than men. That's it. And also, if you look at the front of this, you can see that woman's name. You can type her name in the Nebraska Sex Offender Registry. Brenda Griffith. I know her personally. She was in child care. What do the majority of men in child care who get in trouble for sexual anything with children, how many of them actually have any physical contact with those children in a sexual way? Very few. Less than 30%. Over 90% of women in childcare. Over 90% are busted because they got pregnant. Just so you know. There are some women who have been forced to hold on to their, planning on having an abortion, were forced to not have the abortion until they could make sure they could collect the fetus so they could do DNA tests. Did you or did you not mess around with that 14-year-old boy? The fact is, we're all at risk of that kind of abuse, not just women. All of us are at risk of that kind of abuse. Statistically, women are far more likely to be sexual predators when it comes to education. They're also far more likely to get away with it. That's because of stigma attached to having male equipment. Oh, well, if you can get it up, then obviously you were consenting. No, that is not the case. Also, as far as the law goes, that's certainly not the case. Brenda Griffith was in child care, and the boy that she got in trouble for playing around with was her boss's son. Men and women each respectively account for, male parents and female parents each account for 31% of violent deaths against children. That's 62% of the time. That is well over half the time one of your parents is going to be the killer, and they are equal. But there's also one category where women outshine men by a lot. Women are more likely to kill their children with what's not considered a violent death, which I don't understand how some of these forms of death are not considered violent, but they account for over 90% of women killing their children. It's very strange. It's very strange that poisoning your children to death is not considered a violent death. Drowning your children in the bathtub is not considered a violent death. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? But then, in every category where we're being abused, even BLM has that issue. BLM, Black Lives Matter, right? There's a lot of women getting on there and being angry that, nobody's doing anything about sexual assault against black women. Nobody's doing anything about sexual assault, period, for men. Also, one woman who is obviously not autistic but wants to play autistic did point out some very good points. But also, she tried to play it off like she was just a poor innocent victim who didn't know nothing. Oh, well, I didn't know having sex with a guy was bad. Lady, you're 36 years old. You should realize by now that sex is not bad. Forced sex is bad. Just because you had sex out of wedlock doesn't mean that a man took advantage of you for being autistic. Just because you did a lot of drugs and hit the wall, and now nobody wants to play with you, they don't want to give it up to you like they did in their youth. They don't want to give their entire lives and play a bunch of head games just to get laid. They don't want to spend thousands of dollars a month on making you happy for you to complain most of the time, when really it'd be nice to hang out with somebody who's just glad to spend time with you. Somebody who's glad to spend time with you for you, not somebody who's going to spend time with you and talk nonstop about what everybody else in town is doing. That drives us nuts. There's a lot of women who want to small talk. They turn everything into small talk and then want to say that people don't listen to them because they're autistic. No. There are very few of us who actually enjoy small talk because it's a waste of time. If I'm expected to lie to you and tell you my day was great, there's something wrong with your social constructs. If your idea of social interaction is to talk trash on everybody else, well, just remember, there's people like me who don't get embarrassed, and I'll speak that stuff loud, proud, and public. There's a lot of people who are autistic, and autism is different based on every person who's in it. When I say in it, what I mean is that we're fighting. We're all fighting. The ones who can speak, the ones who can't. Low functioning, high functioning, makes no difference. You throw us all in the same category, and you throw wives' tales at us. Now, some of these wives' tales are slightly true for low functioning autistic people. You can ask Shannon Alvarado about her daughter not letting people sit down. That's a true story. Her daughter doesn't let people sit down. The problem is that we've got feminists trying to break in and literally make everything only about sex. Ignore literally all other forms of abuse and ignore all other victims, and we can't have that. These sexists, are doing harm to BLM. They're doing harm to autistic people. They're doing harm to the church folks. They're making all of you look bad. But then, of course, it's nice to have somebody pretty as part of your group, isn't it? That way you've got somebody in your group that someone might listen to. Anna Moomin, a lot of people liked her because she was pretty. When I posted stuff up about autism, if there was something from her that was on that particular subject, I grabbed it and I posted it. The reason for that is because I knew that her face, because she was pretty, would draw people's attention and hopefully they would listen, and people actually did. They're less likely to listen to a male. When it comes to sexual assault, statistically, there are 29 million males in America alive today who are victims of sexual assault before they turned 18. That carries with us for the rest of our lives. So is how we are treated by women when we try to come forward to them. It's horrible. Now, there's also the fact that we have so many women making false accusations and bragging about it on YouTube and Facebook and TikTok and Twitter and who knows what else. Openly bragging about claiming that a man's wearing girls' underwears when he breaks up with you. You tell everybody he's wearing girls' underwear. So what? You post up that LGBT pride stuff, don't you? So what if he wants to wear girls' underwears? You support LGBT pride, but he can't wear girls' underwears? That sounds like, well, first of all, you don't support the LGBT community. It also sounds to me like you're trying to turn if it's somebody who doesn't give you what you want. So the rules have somehow magically changed. Why is that? Because he told you no. When he tells you no, you play Christian, and all of a sudden, all these Christians want to help you out because you're tear jerking and you're a female. Well, I don't play that game. When I cry, my tears are real. Now, is it National Alliance for Men's Domestic, God, what is the name of that place? Oh, I want to make sure I get their name right because I want to try to make sure I get their quote right too. Well, it doesn't appear that I'm going to be able to do that. Maybe it's like the National Men's Rights Coalition or something like that. Talks about how most of the crimes against men go unreported. Sexual crimes, physical crimes, domestic assaults and abuse. The number one reason for men not turning in abuse is fear of arrest. That's right, a man has to fear being arrested for telling on a female predator. A woman goes to her friends and her family so that they can stalk you because you didn't give her what she wanted. She slanders you, named all of them, and then, of course, they're not going to back you up. And that's what you got to deal with as a man, not just in the United States. Great Britain, I've been paying some pretty close attention there. They are horrible. What about the Australians? Oh, they're just as bad. Now, when it comes to autism, especially high functioning autism, it's hard to tell what's going on with a person. If a woman claims that something bad happened, you'll just believe her and you sign over whatever she wants. And many of y'all have been pushed to that point so many times and have seen so many times what happens if you don't give her what she wants that you will sign it over immediately. But you know what? We need to stand up for our rights. Instead of just female autistic people, we need to pay attention to the fact that all autistic people are at risk. If you're going to make it just about females and you're going to get into every one of these things and make it just about females, keep in mind BLM did that and I don't like them either. The KKK did that and I don't like them either. You get to see Elijah McClain. People wanted to make it about him being black. By the way, he was autistic. Nobody cares. They just wanted to push the black thing. Matter of fact, I'd been hearing about that for about 6 months. And I went, you know what? The dude's autistic. And somebody else said, yeah, duh, they already announced it on the news. I'm like, well, I didn't get to see any of that till just now. And it seems to me that feller, Mr. Elijah McClain, well, if I'd have paid better attention, I probably would have spoke up sooner, but I had my own stuff going on. However, if the family of Elijah McClain had gotten a hold of me, I would have spoken up immediately. I certainly feel the need to speak up for Michelle Rodriguez after the full railroading that she achieved. She fought hard, but she got stabbed in the back by Darren O'Connor, same as me. She also knows wings. And she also knows George and Christine. Finding out that George is the one who found Christine dead is pretty significant. But Christine wasn't autistic either. She was a drug addict. Danica Garner, not autistic. She's a drug addict. Big difference. She also pretends to be Christian. I don't follow the Christian religion. I do try to follow the examples of Jesus, best of my abilities. Which, you know what? That's not because I think I'm Jesus. It's not because I think Jesus was the Son of God either. Because I don't. I think Jesus did exist. I think he was a human being who was very good to other human beings. And there was a lot of people who got real nostalgic years after the fact. All right, well, you get as nostalgic as you want. And we can have this theologian thing going on. We'll have a theological debate, right? No, that's not what this is about. A lot of you want to pretend that we're all argumentative. No, 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 no. You are argumentative. You want to be right. That is a neurotypical trait. It is also a neurotypical trait that we have taught primarily to women as a fallback and a go-to. I'm all for fighting for the rights of autistic women, as long as it's fighting for autistic people. Women should not get special treatment in this, because the fact is, the numbers have been skewed for years, and it wasn't until we got TikTok and Facebook and YouTube that we got to see how truly screwed up the situation is. How many false accusations there are from women, and over what trivial crap. A man is allowed to tell you no. Telling you no does not make him a sexual predator. If you take advantage of him and he kicks you out of his house, that does not make him a woman beater or a sexual predator. Many of these women that I know, when they hit the wall and they realized that it wasn't as easy to find men that they could mooch off of, they started trying to get somebody to go with them. It was pretty easy to do. You go in with two of your lady friends and you look it up before you go in, and then you go running around telling everybody that you're autistic now all of a sudden. I was first diagnosed with autism when I was, I believe, 9 years old. All right, someone calling himself Daniel Brown typed, "How are you today? Good. New Zealand in." All right, you got to work on your English a little bit more. You always point out that you're from New Zealand. So here's the thing, Daniel Brown. What do you know about the haka? I'm going to stop here and we're going to give you attention. You're a male. You're in New Zealand. This is another one of the countries where issues like this are happening. So let's get to know you a little bit, Daniel Brown. Let us know a little bit about New Zealand. While you're typing, I'll keep talking. I've already done a few of my videos on New Zealand. I've torn apart the Maori culture, the British culture, French culture, the Danish, and the Dutch. We've also broken apart a little bit of the, some of the weapons used by the Maori. We've also covered some of the Hawaiian stuff, how culturally, many are, they're considered Polynesians. But not all of them are from Polynesia or Micronesia. Obviously, Hawaii is miles away from all of them. Now let's get back to the subject at hand. this MGTOW thing that's going on, men going their own way. We're tired. We really are. We're tired of fighting hard for rights only for them to be robbed by women. We try to fight for rights for all of us, and women want to rob it and make it about them. When it comes to how autistic people are treated, we need to not separate it according to gender. Wrong is wrong regardless of gender. And to give one gender the spotlight in everything is not okay, especially when it is leading to so many deaths. I was told by some people with BLM that I should not be speaking up about the homeless issue or the disability issue because BLM is fighting for our rights. And that BLM, because black people are the most marginalized people in America, that lo and behold, me speaking up about my rights as a human being, they need to go to the back of the bus, right? My rights need to go to the back of the bus. My voice needs to go to the back of the bus. I need to speak up about what's happening to black people, as I've been doing most of my life. I gotta stop what I'm doing and fight specifically for women, which I've been doing most of my life. Well, it's at the point where we have to be protected from women's opinions. A woman can pretend that you might do something, and that's enough to harm you. You're not allowed to stand up to women. You are not allowed in this country unless you have money. And you are loved by a lot of women. Look at Johnny Depp. Most men in his situation, especially in Hollywood, would not get away with any of that. Look at Whitney Houston and Bobby Brown. The fact that Disney didn't want Johnny Depp as part of their movies because they're children's movies, apparently. And they can't be having domestic violence in children's movies or actors in children's movies that are known as being domestic abusers, unless it's, well, Johnny Depp. Nope, Disney said no. Then we had our little donkey and pony show trial where they got special rights that were all denied to me. This is not okay. It's never okay to do this to people. And it is not okay for women to be coming in and trying to make it so that only women are paid attention to. Oh, well, men are sexually assaulted too. 1 in 6 men in the United States was sexually assaulted before the age of 18. 80% of the time, it's one or the other of our parents. When we say that men lead in sexual assault, that is not true. You know, we used to say that women would never lie about sexual assault. And now some of the numbers on sexual assault accusations are saying that women, at least 80% of the time, lie about sexual assault. 80% of the time that women claim that they were sexually assaulted, 80% of the time, it's false. Many of these women eat up a lot of resources from the churches that are supposed to be for at-risk adults, for people who are in an actual crisis. And a lot of these women, well, they become professional church writers. As long as you go to church and you pull your whining and pining thing at the end of it. Preacher's supposed to do something. Other people in the congregation's supposed to do something. Man's not allowed to do that. He's supposed to have some pride. Man's supposed to do it himself. I know a lot of women who claim that they did it themselves and absolutely did not. They mooched off of men their entire lives. Especially dorky men. The men that are not worth anything to your society except as simps. I know a lot of autistic men who ended up raising kids that aren't their own. Yeah, that's right. Autistic people can be a functional part of your society. Matter of fact, we're more functional than most of your society because we don't bother with the lies. We don't bother with the BS. We don't bother with the small talk. When it comes to masking and high masking, you know what? That's all fine and dandy. But we got to pay attention to the fact that there are men who are autistic too. There are many people who didn't get a diagnosis until later in life. Yes, I got one when I was younger, but I got lucky. And you guys, you wonder to yourself, well, how could it possibly be lucky to not get your diagnosis? Or to get your diagnosis? Well, I got the diagnosis back before all of this internet crap. So it was just a matter of we just didn't go back to that doctor. You know, yeah, I had the diagnosis, but if you don't go back to the doctor and you don't save the medical transcripts, well, it doesn't matter if you're autistic, now you're magically not. And because we were able to sidestep that when I was younger, despite the actual diagnosis being there, the thing is that at that point in time, just as now, autism was seen in a very, very bad light. The things that were shown to be wives' tales in the 1990s, we still have in courts, eating up our lives today. And Daniel Brown, I'm not sure why you type that every time that you get on. Hi, how are you today? Good. And you're in New Zealand. Okay, we know you're in New Zealand. Very cool. Thank you for checking in. Are you autistic, Daniel Brown? Anyway, I've known a lot of women who ended up getting jobs at churches. These women that got jobs at churches were some of the biggest, how do I say it nicely, prostitutes that I ever knew. They weren't prostitutes because they took money for sexual favors. They took goods and services instead. But a lot of guys get tired of that. They get tired of, oh, well, you know, if I don't buy her what she wants, she complains and complains and complains and complains. And also she complains about she's not horny ever. Like, I don't care if she's horny or not. I just don't have that equivalency. Whether or not you are hot and bothered and ready to go doesn't make any difference to me because I'm not ready to go with you. I've got 3 grapes, and when it's cold, I get 2 grapes. Yes, that's a reference to my equipment. If you don't get what that means, then you're not an adult and you should get off of this channel. Alright, on to the next subject. How do we change this? When our rights as autistic folks are being undermined because women want to make it about just women. Well, we'll make autism about women getting raped. We'll make Tourette syndrome about women getting raped. We'll make PTSD about women getting raped. We'll make BLM about women getting raped. We'll even make the KKK about women getting raped. I've had conversations with a lot of different people with a lot of different opinions on a lot of different subjects, including the ones I've just spoken about. Obviously, I don't sleep much. You know what that's from? Is it from the choices that I've made? No, it's the trauma that I've lived through. There's a lot of people who claim that they would help me after Natalie died, and they didn't understand what a safe environment was. They just kept sending me to places where there's screamers. Do you understand what a safe environment is? No, you don't. A lot of people wanted to tell me to go to the homeless shelter. They didn't want to try understanding the safety issues. Just over and over again, people telling me what to do as if I'm an idiot. Like, hey, I was homeless in Boulder for years. I walked people to the warming centers and the homeless shelter. I don't need you to tell me where those things are at. I need help turning in my predators and turning in evidence. That's the same help that I needed before Natalie died. But you know what? It didn't work. Why? Because I'm the wrong gender and because I had no friends or family who actually cared. When you force us to go to drug addicts for help and drug salesmen for help, when you force us to go to people like Todd Ryan Case for help, or we have to go to Kayla Trujillo for help, you're making us go to drug dealers. When we have to go to Ken Wilson and Leatha Plunkett for help, you're making us go to drug dealers for help. Do you really think that drug dealers are going to help us? And then, of course, we always have to, well, as we're expected to, take a back seat. How many of these male autism advocates who are autistic have spoken up on their channel specifically for females with autism? How inclusive do they try to be? Now, I want you to look at all of these women with their autism channels. How many of them speak up specifically for the men? None. Not one. Not a single one. We're expected to be inclusive of people who are not inclusive of us. Men and women on the spectrum tend to get treated differently as well. Not in their youth. In our youth, it's pretty easy to tell the autistic ones. It's not the women learn how to mask better than boys. That's not it at all. It's that we've taught women that they can vie for any advantage, and, well, they can always find a man who will do it for them. Or find a group that you can establish power and control by batting your eyes and saying, look at me, look at me. So there's a woman on one of the autism sites that I go to once in a while. And I look through, and there's about 30 different things from women. And I'd probably say about a third of them actually are autistic. I'd say that at least a third of them are psychopathic. The things they had to say were not related to autism. And many of them wanted to type things that they were thinking, oh, well, you know, this is a good support group. I'll type in some assumptions about autism. One lady even typed that she didn't have any real emotions, so she must be autistic. No, that doesn't make you autistic. Autistic people have emotions. We have emotions. We're not psychopaths. Temple Grandin is a psychopath. Of course, she's the face of modern autism, isn't she? An 8-year-old woman who is a psychopath is the modern face of autism. And nobody has a problem with this. When it comes to getting public defenders, they tell us guys that they can't possibly defend all of us. They can't possibly defend everybody because they have an overwhelming caseload. Meanwhile, they'll trade 3 innocent hobos to help one drug-addicted woman who's got kids to get off with the crime she actually committed. Gross. Being a manipulator and playing chameleon is different than being autistic and playing chameleon. If you're a manipulator who's playing chameleon, you go into a church and you're a godly man. As soon as you get out of church, you go down to the biker bar and you're a biker. When you get out of the biker bar and probably thrown out, you go to another group. All of a sudden you're into sports, you're into tennis, you're into football, you're into basketball. I know women who have for certainly had more sex than a lot of us guys put together have had in our lifetimes. Now, it's been shown that men are more likely to date below their category. A man who is a 10 is more likely to date somebody who is, well, less than good looking. It's surprising how many men are no longer attracted to good-looking women because they get tired of all of the whining, the moaning, and the complaining, and the vying for power and control and free things. With the autism community, we end up giving a lot of our resources to women who aren't autistic. When it comes to domestic violence, we give most of our resources to women, many of whom never been beaten a day in their life. They just didn't get what they wanted. If your husband beats you, you turn him in when he beats you. If you don't do that, that's your fault. For a man, he has to go in and turn it in himself, and he's grilled for even trying. Treated like he should be ashamed of himself for turning in crimes committed by women. Aw, poor you. You got beat up by a girl. There's a lot of women and men who are diagnosed later. No, there's not a lot of men who are diagnosed later in life. For a man, they tell him, after a certain age, it's real hard to tell if you're autistic or not. Well, apparently not, because there are literally millions of women in the United States who have gotten autism diagnosis between the ages of 25 and 45. Tons of them. The 25-year-olds are the ones who basically quit. They go, you know what? It's too much hassle trying to get a man to pay for everything. Maybe I could get some disability money. Maybe I could get some sympathy. In each and every one of these groups and categories, it's a double-edged sword. But the double-edged sword, you got a red side and you got the blue side. If you want to assign gender roles, well, we can say it's the pink side and the blue side, right? When it comes to a woman saying these things, I'm autistic, I need help. That's the pink side of the sword. That's the defender side. We're expected to defend her and her position. Then there's the blue side. Hey man, I'm being abused because I'm autistic, and people are trying to use that against me and wives' tales against me. Right? For the man side of the sword, though, it's different. It's not, oh, poor her, poor her, poor her. It's, dude, you just need to man up. Dude, you just need to man up. Manning up will fix all your problems. You just need to man up. Ugh. Gross. Anyway, I was thinking about sending the lady a whole bunch of links to sexual predators because the one lady who started it wanted to make it about sexual assault against autistic women who are vulnerable. We're all vulnerable. That's kind of the point. When you want to make it specifically and only about autistic women, you're being a sexist POS. And you are taking away from our cause. When BLM pulls their BS, they're taking away from our cause. Because remember, BLM was supposed to be about equality and fighting for our rights. But what categories are being left out of BLM? Males. You have to be specifically a black male for BLM to care. BLM was trying to be inclusive of women, even though BLM is about saving lives, isn't it? 96% of those killed by police every year, 96% are males. And even BLM has completely given up on that and taken an entire back seat to black women's issues. Basically, a bunch of black women blaming everything on men. Well, that's why 96% of those killed by police every year are men. Because no matter how much women complain that they don't have any power or say so in this country, they've got us all by the balls. They've got autistic people by the balls. They got BLM by the balls. Even Autism Speaks is run by women primarily who are not autistic. We have no representation. Instead of actual evidence, it's about who's popular. Who gets the help is based on who's good looking and who's female. There's a lady on my site, her name is Anne Hathaway. No, Jane Hathaway. Anne Hathaway is an actress. Jane Hathaway doesn't keep her word, she doesn't pay attention, she doesn't give a crap. She did post up a selfie today, and it's a whole bunch of what we expect, right? Don't we expect to see that on a woman's site when she takes a picture of herself? A bunch of people typing to her how beautiful she is, how gorgeous she is, how pretty she is, over and over and over in the comments section. Why are looks so important? Why are looks so important to an entire group of people who want to project it onto only men care about looks? Only men care about looks. No, 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 no. Nearly everything in an American woman's life revolves around looks. When your mom tells you that you should date a guy because you'll have good-looking kids, or you post up that selfie because you get instant gratification, people telling you how pretty you are. You're so pretty, you're so pretty, you're so pretty. It's not about attention to an issue. It's about getting attention for attention's sake for you. I'm not fighting for attention's sake. I'm fighting so that those of us who are actually autistic can be treated like human beings instead of having to take a back seat to everyone else as if we're all retarded and deserve to be abused by your regime. I'm tired of conservative women and non-conservative women both telling me what to do, what to think, and what to feel, telling me I'm not allowed to have an opinion, and then telling me that I need to have an opinion, but I need to have the opinion that they have. I know a lot of conservative Christian women who do not agree with what the majority of you say. And they do the same thing you do. You're not allowed to have an opinion because you're a male, but you need to do what I say and go along with what I say because I'm a female. You need to vote how I tell you to vote because I'm a female. And no, I don't have to vote how you want me to. We need to stop just giving things to women just because they're women. We need to stop abusing men just because they're men. And for those of us who are autistic being abused, it's hard enough being heard without having women trying to take over the whole thing and shove us to the wayside. I believe in doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do. That includes telling the truth. There are a lot of women, matter of fact, the majority of women who are diagnosed with autism, high-functioning autism, were diagnosed later in life. Most of them when they hit the wall. Men who are autistic as adults are told how incredibly difficult it is to diagnose an adult with autism. Apparently not if you're a woman. Apparently not if you're a good-looking woman, especially. Them looks are important. It's easier to manipulate a doctor if you're a good-looking woman, whether it's a male or a female doctor, and that's been proven time and again as well. The problem is you don't pay attention to patterns. We have a lot of women in this country who are trying to deprive men of any rights and say that we owe it to women to give up our entire lives for them, every paycheck too. Women make 80% of the buying decisions in the United States. 80%. So it doesn't matter if she earns less money than you, she's still going to end up spending more. There's also the fact that over 80% of our services for colleges go to women. We have given women free reign of special rights to do as they choose. BLM is being diminished by women. The Christian community is being diminished by women because we're wasting all of our resources on women who are taking advantage of all of us. Well, I'm tired of getting taken advantage of. I'm tired of having it thrown in my face that men earn on average $49,000 a year and women only earn $45,000 a year. Well, men also work a lot more overtime on average every week. 7 hours of overtime more per week. When a woman wants to get free college, let's say she had a kid, that's going to make it very easy for her to get into free college. I know a lot of women who have boyfriends, they won't get married because if they get married, then they don't get their free college and they have to go get a job. I also know a lot of women who refuse to get divorces or get divorces and have boyfriends but pretend they don't have the boyfriend who's supporting them because there's alimony and child support. I know men with full custody of their kids who are paying child support. How messed up is that? A woman going to college for 1 year costs over $100,000. That's every single dollar that two men make in an entire year. Every single dollar that they have. So they can't pay for their vehicle, they can't pay for insurance, can't pay for rent, can't pay for anything because literally every single penny for those two men is going so that one woman can go to college for a year. Now, thank goodness we don't do it that way. Thank goodness that is evenly distributed and stolen from each and every one of us. The problem is that we're not getting the benefits of that. We're just doing the work. The majority of the work done within a Christian community, the actual labor, the majority of it is done by men. Many of the Christian women that I know, they won't volunteer to help you. Of course they won't. They'll volunteer for their husband to help you. So, the most marginalized people in the country are being ignored by a bunch of racists and a bunch of sexists and a bunch of people who want to push some imaginary space wizard in the sky on all of us. I'm not down with that. I like the idea of Jesus as a man. If I think of him as a God, well, I absolutely can't stand the SOB. I don't think of Jesus as a God. Because if he were a God, he would be a revolting creature, a disgusting creature, for allowing what's been allowed. I'm not a Christian because I don't follow the belief that Jesus was the one and only Son of God. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, so that whosoever believeth in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. That's John 3:16. Had to memorize that for Royal Rangers when I was a kid. Now that we've established that I went to Royal Rangers as a kid and I learned a little bit of scripture, I can recite one line from the Bible, King James Version, and not even well anymore. I see Jesus as an example of how to be a good man. And saying I'm not Jesus is not a valid excuse for not trying to be a good person. We've also shown that women are more likely to do harmful things and have no remorse about it. A lot of women, if there's something that they feel that they should be feeling remorseful about, studies have shown that if a man does that, he generally quits the behavior. Women are more likely to commit the behavior more. How strange is that? It's not because women are so incredibly different. It's because we've taught them different. We teach women how to manipulate men because men are taught that we're supposed to protect women. when a man is the victim, and he is more likely to be the victim than a woman, we tell him he's got to take care of it himself. Enough of that. Enough of all men having to pay the price for women who make bad decisions in their dating lives. I didn't make you date a Chad. I don't mind contributing part of my paycheck, when I have a paycheck, to your children being able to eat, because it's not their fault that their mom is the way that she is. Good to be rid of you. Thanks for coming to visit. Stay out of trouble or don't get caught. Remember, you are your brother's keeper and no victim left behind. You're also your sister's keeper too. Remember that. Just because I chastise people who do wrong things doesn't mean that every person within a group is committing those acts.